Hi, welcome to the Capital Coffee Connection podcast. I'm Liz Hirsh Naftali, and I am really excited because once again, I have an amazing elected leader who is here to talk about heart, humanity, and home. My goal on this podcast is for us to really get to know our leaders and not about their politics and policy, but about who they are as people. This is a governor, and in his recent statement, he said, "I know we're not going to agree on everything, but I want us to agree on this. Let's stand united in our commitment to working together, Democrats and Republicans, to do what is required in this moment." And I am sitting here with Governor Wes Moore, who is a Democrat. But if I didn't tell you that, you would just say, this is what our governors, this is what our leaders should be talking about, working together. So that is my way of, part of my way of introducing you and saying thank you for being here.
I'm so happy that we can do this. You have no idea how inspiring you have always been to me, and I love this platform. I love the work that you're doing. I think this is the healing balm that our society needs right now. So it is an absolute joy to be on CQ.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to give just a little background, which is I met you at an event a few years before you became a governor, and it was at a Black Economic Alliance event. And I remember being in this room, and I'd come with a friend, and all of a sudden I see this guy walk in, and I'm like, who is this guy with a smile? And then I sit down, and then you're there, and you are the speaker. And you were really talking about, I believe at that moment, your work as a leader in the Black community, but also you had just finished working at the Robin Hood Foundation, and you were going to run for governor. But I just thought, like, here's this man who's like a really big guy, but you have like a smile like a little boy. And for me, that was sort of just this interesting piece of who you are, sort of this incredible leader and a man, but still with this heart and this joy of a young person, of a child.
I'm just deeply blessed because I know, I'm probably the most improbable governor
Yeah.
inside America, right? I'm a kid who was raised by an immigrant single mom. I'm a person who, had handcuffs on my wrist when I was 11 years old. I was sent to military school when I was 13. My father died in front of me when I was 3. I joined the army when I was 17. Like, there was nothing about my life trajectory that said that one day that you're going to be sitting there as the governor of your state and the first Black governor in the history of the state of Maryland. I feel very blessed. Like, I feel like we all have a unique responsibility to not just recognize the gifts that we've received, but also to actually do something with it. And people will say that there is no fatigue in your happiness, and that is true. There isn't. We've got a lot to be happy about. We've got a lot to be thankful for. But also, it just means that we know we have more work to do to make sure that other people can share that.
Yeah. And you talk about being unlikely, but at the same time, you have taken this role, and you've had so many other things that you've done in the past, which are amazing. But don't you feel like they all kind of led you to this moment to be this incredible leader at this moment?
I didn't really start fully appreciating that until I got into the seat, right? Because when I first started running for governor, I ran against people who were statewide elected officials. There were 3 statewide electeds. There were countywide electeds. There was the former head of the DNC. There was 2 Obama cabinet secretaries that were running. So it was like, this was a very, very accomplished group of people. And then there's like me, the guy who worked in finance and then ran a small business and ran the Robin Hood Foundation and was an Army officer. When I say improbable, it's like, because I didn't come from a political background or political journey. But the really interesting thing, Liz, was that once you kind of got here, you realized that everything that you did in life was God preparing me, right? Whereas, like, when I was leading soldiers in Afghanistan, and I led paratroopers in Afghanistan, I wasn't there thinking to myself, man, this is actually really good when I run for governor. Nope. That's never crossed your mind, right? When you're working in finance, you're thinking, wow, the budgeting thing, that's been really good one day when I run for governor or running Robin. But you just realize that God was just steadily preparing you in a way that you might not even have fully understood. But when challenge comes or when obstacles come, you know that you can lean on a preparation that you were receiving the entire time, whether or not you realize it or not.
Yeah, that means a lot. Go back to your mom. See, there's that child smile. There's that, oh, my mom. Talk a little bit, and I know we've spoken before about really what she did for you. And she saw opportunity for you, but also made hard decisions.
She did.
And your grandfather and his influence. Because when I think about the stories that I've done my reading, but I also have talked to you, like those two people really had a lot of influence in who you are to this moment.
Crucial. I am a very proud grandson of James and Winnell Thomas, as well as William Wesley and Gwendolyn Moore, and a very proud son of William Wesley Moore, my dad who passed when I was younger, and my mom, Joy Moore. Because I think that and specifically with my mom in that case, where my sister used to say that, but our mom wore sweaters so we could wear coats. And it was a beautiful analogy about the kind of sacrifices that she made, where this is a woman who, saw tragedy of so many different forms, and so many different times in her young life. Had gotten married once, had been in a terribly abusive relationship, left in the middle of the night with her at that time, baby daughter, and said, "I can't do this. We're not gonna survive this." And she got up and left, and then finally met someone who was the person of her dreams, and had two more children, myself and my baby sister. And then early and soon after, she had her third child. He died instantaneously, unexpectedly, and now she was now going to raise these three kids on her own.
But with the help of her parents and
that was it, right? And then I think about that, where she was trying to figure out ways of navigating this. Now she's having to lead these three kids, all young kids, doing it on her own. And eventually she just realized, she's like, I need help. And so she called up the people who she knew would always say yes, and that was her parents. And my grandfather was a minister. He was the first Black minister in the history of the Dutch Reformed Church. Was in a church in the South Bronx. My grandmother was a school teacher for 40 years inside the South Bronx. And I always say their house was barely big enough for them, but they figured out a way to make it big enough for all of us. And when my mom called and said, I need help, they told her, bring the kids all up here and we can help out. And that's actually what moved us from Maryland up to New York, where I got a chance to, where I say I was lovingly raised by not just my mom, but was lovingly raised by my grandparents, who really helped to guide the path as well.
It's great. It's just wonderful. And your grandfather, if I remember correctly, he went back.
Yeah.
And then tell a little bit about that, because that's a pretty cool story.
His story is amazing. And he really is one of my heroes. He is a person who was born, first one, my mom's side of the family, born in this country, born in South Carolina. And when he was young, his father, my great-grandfather, was a minister, but he's a very vocal minister. And it eventually incited threats. And one night, in the middle of the night, the Ku Klux Klan had essentially run them out. And they didn't just run them out of their town in South Carolina. They ran them out of the country, because they all went back to Jamaica, where my great-grandfather was from. And for much of my family, they vowed, they're like, we'll never return back to that country. Yeah. And much of my family did not. But my grandfather, I always say in all his humility, he always said, this country would be incomplete without me. And he came back to this country. He went to an HBCU, Lincoln University, Historically Black College University, and got his degree and became a minister, just like his father. And one of the amazing things about him was the same threats that were coming to his father started coming to him when he became a minister. And he stuck. And because he loved this country, Liz. He loved it. And I always say he died at 87 years old. He transitioned. And I was in Afghanistan, actually, when he transitioned. And he had a deep Jamaican accent for his entire life. But he was maybe the most patriotic American I've ever met. And that always stuck with me. That's someone who literally some of his earliest memories was his country rejecting him and his family. Turn around to love this country more than anyone I'd ever met. and he would defend it
Why?
to anybody.
I get it, but why?
And it's something that I even oftentimes wrestle with, because I'm like, even in my greatest frustrations, I would look at my grandfather. I'm like, how is he the one sitting there defending
And forgiving many things.
and forgiving?
This to me is like the essence. It's being able to forgive and look beyond and and see potential, but also see the beauty.
Yes. And I think there's a power of faith in that, where I think it was also his faith that helped him to understand that. I think about, I think about in the Bible, for, I believe it's Luke 6, where they talk about this idea of loving your enemies, even in your hardest moments, how the thing that we're being asked to do is to love, and that love will transcend all. And I think for him, there was a baseline of faith was the thing that's helping to drive that, but also it's a baseline of understanding history, that the country's journey has been, and the world's journey has been terribly uneven. And, we've had moments of clear revelation in our world, and we've had moments of clear heartbreak and just evil that we've seen. The thing that has always moved the country and the world forward was then when you had the group of people who refused to either give in to evil or to resign to it. And that's the thing that's always made our world durable and beautiful and everlasting. And I think he saw himself as part of that tapestry, part of that mosaic, where he was like, the reason that I love this country is not because I don't know its history. The reason I love this country is because I do. And I know the people who made this country work were the people who didn't stop believing it.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say yes. It's beautiful. And I understand that concept and the idea of like the love that we put in will have a much greater effect. But it is the hate that brings us to the hardest moments where we have to choose love. That's how I see it. And my personal praise is love. Yeah.
When it's hardest.
When it's hardest. And it is in those moments that I think that people, if you can show love and you have love, it is incredible that people are out there waiting to feel it and to be inspired by it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
Yeah. So let's go back to you. You went to a bunch of different schools. You got a pretty darn good education. You played some football. You did all those things. Do you have one teacher or like one person that through your education was just sort of a compliment to who you are today, saying they believed in you? Because that's what I've asked all of the leaders, like a teacher or a mentor or administrator.
Oof. I'm so blessed, because I'm thinking about the mosaic of people.
Yeah.
Who, whether it's a Colonel Renane, who was my amazing history and social studies teacher, who made the Federalist Papers fascinating to me. I'm really kind of inspired my love of public policy and seeing a role in it. But I tell you, one person who I think about is Senora Rothstein, who is my Spanish teacher. She's my Spanish teacher in 7th grade. And I had actually just about broken a record at that point. I'd been kicked out of every single one of my classes, except for Senora Rothstein's. The one class I did not get kicked out of. And it was November of that year. I was acting up and doing something, young and dumb. And Senora Rothstein told me to get out. And so I then had now completed the cycle. I had now been kicked out of every single one of my classes. So she told me to get out. She told me to go to the principal's office. I went to the principal's office, and I sat in what felt like my assigned chair at that point. And Senora Rothstein comes into the classroom and comes to his office. And she almost is like, she's like tears in her eyes. And she says to my principal, she said, "Do you know the thing that hurts me most about watching his behavior is he doesn't even realize how smart he is." And I hadn't heard a teacher say about people like, I don't think I did anything to justify a teacher defending me in that way, even in a moment where she was so disappointed in me. But it wasn't, she was basically telling me, it's not that I'm angry, I'm disappointed, because you're better than this.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if she fully understood at that moment how meaningful that interaction was, because like the next day I literally sat in front of her class. I never hacked it out of her class again. I ended up actually, I think I ended up getting an A in the class, but it's like, that was a really important moment for me.
Because you knew she saw you.
Because she saw me, and she wasn't willing to just dismiss me. She wasn't willing to say, well, let him go and do whatever he needs to do. She was like, what hurts me so much is that he doesn't even realize how smart he is. And that was a really, really important transition moment for me, where I actually started believing it. And I think that for a lot of kids and a lot of young people, particularly ones who are going through a lot, once they don't just hear it, the transition point is when they start believing it.
Yes.
And I think that, we will become products of our expectations in that way.
Yeah. Somebody else who believes in you and who is your better half is your wife, Dawn.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, I've had the pleasure of meeting with her and hearing her also talk about you.
She adores you and your family.
Thank you. And one day I would love to have her and you come on and we'll check some of this stuff out. But
That'd be great.
before I go, and again, did you really get married in Las Vegas?
Oh, yeah. We were married
By an Elvis?
by Elvis. Elvis married us. It was wild because that was not the intention.
Right.
The intention was, so I proposed to her right before I left for Afghanistan. And so we were saying, we'll just get married when I get back from Afghanistan. And the first half of the deployment was it was a hard deployment. And you just kind of saw the realities of war. And I knew that if something were to happen to me, that the Army treats fiancés no different than girlfriends, right? And so the only way the Army was going to fully recognize her if something happened to me was if she was my wife. And so I came home. I actually came home because when my grandfather passed away, they allowed me to come and bury him. And so I went there, and then I was like, let's just get married. Let's go. And then we literally went it's so crazy when you think about it. We literally went to Vegas and went to one of these like Elvis chapels, and literally there's like pictures of Elvis Presley marrying us. And so when we came back though, but we felt so bad because I was like, there's no way if my grandmother hears that we got married and she wasn't there, I'm like, she would be out of her mind upset. And so we ended up, when I finished my deployment, we ended up having a big wedding ceremony right in Washington that everyone there thought it was like us getting married. They had no idea we were married for, we already were 1 year too.
But everybody got what they needed.
But they all got what they needed. They were all happy, but they didn't realize this is really more of a celebration for you all.
Yeah, and I also say like the Vegas Elvis Presley was like sort of like a like it's a scene out of a movie.
It's a total sweet.
And I'd like to be able to have, like, while we're talking about this, that you give us the picture, we could put it in the background of you all with Elvis. So what is the best advice you've ever received and perhaps the worst advice?
I'd say in this job, the best advice I got was from a good buddy of mine, Spencer Cox, who was the governor of Utah, where he said to me early in our relationship, he said, the great thing about being a governor is a governor can do anything. A governor just can't do everything. And so he's like, so you need to figure out what are the things that you would give it all up for. And he said, and then make that a priority, make sure it's Noah.
Yeah.
But understand you're going to lose on some other things because of it. And he said, but that's okay because you got your entity now. And I just thought it was really, really smart because it just helps to focus you on this idea of prioritization. Like, what are the things that just like, yeah, I'm not going to compromise on that because that's part of the real reason that I did this in your first race. I would say some of the worst advice that I have got in this job is, it was actually early advice from people who were saying that when we were even going through the process of trying to figure out like how to win the race, and you're looking at the map and who do you need and all that kind of stuff. And you have the people who are telling you who you needed to win. If you spend time in at least 5 counties, if you spend time with this demographic group, if you spend time here, that's your path.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying it was horrible advice, but I'm saying like, maybe that was good advice if you're talking about mathematically, what do you need to win? But I think there's a bigger question about what do you need to successfully go. And I might say you need these 5 counties or these 7 groups or whatever like that.
Yeah.
But in order to govern, I think your answer is pretty simple. It's everybody. You need them all.
Yeah.
and you need to go make your pitch to all.
Yeah.
Because I believe that that's the only way you're actually going to create a measure of lasting change, is if that everybody can look at you, and even when they don't agree with you, they can all say, but I know that's my governor, and I know they're fighting for me. That if you have a situation where you have certain people can say that, but not everybody, I think you run a really hard risk of not just getting your agenda done, of not understanding why you're supposed to be in the chair in the first place. So
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the authenticity of who you are, and that you're going to have conversations and also meet with people that are tough and may not agree. But you can't just scurry through life and just be with the people that do agree, or count on people to just support you. And then you go back to, it's building relationships, is what you basically just said.
it is.
Really, that's the beauty of what public service should be.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Of what it should be.
Yeah.
Of what it should be.
Okay, so now we're going to go from meaningful to getting to know Wes Moore. I have these rapid questions. You can answer them, and they're kind of fun ones, however you wish.
Okay.
Favorite sound?
My kids' voices.
Favorite color?
Purple.
It's mine too.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's great.
Favorite scent or smell?
The ocean.
Who's your biggest cheerleader?
It's actually close, because I would say, I'd say my mom, because she's just like, you're only son. But my wife, Dawn, is, I wouldn't say that she's my greatest cheerleader per se. I'd say she's my greatest defender. She won't just cheer for nothing, but she will defend me like no one else.
And I know you don't really like sports that much. And I know that you don't get excited about sports that much. And I know you played a little football, but talk about your favorite sports teams.
Favorite sports teams by far, probably not surprisingly, they're all Maryland based, but the Baltimore Ravens and the Baltimore Orioles. And it's just because I know what they mean.
Yeah.
I know what they mean to our community. I know what they mean to our state. They are, they're cherished. And, I always say one of my favorite days of the year, every single year, is opening day for the Baltimore Orioles. It's just like,
That's the kid in you. I see.
I know.
Yeah.
Because it's like hope springs eternal whenever you have opening day. And so we always have a good time.
Right.
We always have a ball there. So it's like, it's always one of my favorite days of the year.
Favorite food or meal?
I'd say my favorite food is Jamaican food. And not just because it's amazing, where you're talking about oxtail and curry goat or curry chicken or yaki and saltfish or whatever, dumplings, festival. But it reminds me of my grandmother, and it reminds me of my grandfather, and it reminds me of why I love Jamaica so much.
Music. What do you listen to when you work out?
When I work out, it's usually old school hip hop, but I also love reggae. I love gospel. I'm pretty eclectic, and like I love 80s rock. It's pretty. I've got a pretty interesting palette.
Playlist.
Yeah.
Household chore. What is your best household chore if you had to do one?
Well, so I would say cooking, but for me it's not a chore. It's like my joy. Like honestly, it's really puts me in a place of peace. I learned to cook from my grandmother, because I'll get in trouble a lot, and so she made me come home and basically almost like service her sous chef when she'd be cooking dinner
That was
for a week. Yeah, she was like, here, chop this, or dice that, or give me a half a cup of this. And so I almost had to serve as a sous chef for her, but I was paying attention, and she did it to keep me out of trouble, but I really paid attention to what was happening, and so I'm the chef in the family, and I love it.
Great. What is your favorite thing to cook?
Either oxtail or codfish, ackee and saltfish.
Sounds yummy.
Yeah.
And what is Wes Moore's superpower?
One thing I think, and Dawn actually mentions this, I feel like I'm a good listener. I really appreciate when people tell me their stories, and I really appreciate they tell me what's on their mind, because I think it helps to shape my worldview. And I think that part of the reason, and I think a big reason why I think we've been able to be successful so far, is I listen really well. And I think that matters in the way you're making decisions.
One of the last questions, and we've talked about it throughout, but just to kind of go back to it, that I've asked everybody is the concept of what joy means to them. And I read that you had said, "I would rather flirt with failure than never dance with my joy," which I thought I think is beautiful. And having said that, what does joy mean to you? And what does, if you have joy, how do you share that joy? Because I believe that when you walk in a room, people understand that you are a joyful person.
I say for me, joy means freedom. It's a freedom to exist. It's a freedom to be able to move around. It's a freedom to find what makes you happy. And in your time here, for you to have the type of life that you hope for yourself and know that can be done without restrictions or barriers, without interruption. So for me, joy is freedom and the ability to move and exist. So that's why I think I really try to push for that kind of, for everyone to be able to experience that kind of joy, because I think it matters. And that would be the world.
Yeah. I think it matters. And I think also it's like that beautiful combination of being, a serious leader, but also having understanding like what people are looking for. And sometimes it's just kind of what we look for as children, which is just to be in the moment, to be connected, to be heard, to be celebrated, but to be safe.
Yes.
And I know that for you, and I know how much your children mean and how important that is to have them with you and doing all the work that you're doing, but just for all the children and for all the young people, because I think watching you, and I was saying to somebody on your team that I had seen your State of the State address, and really what you were talking about was making sure that this was a state that was safe for your children.
Yes. Yes.
And so, we could go on and on, but it's like, it's the safety of children. And so I say thank you for, one, sharing your heart and your humanity and your home, like where you come from. But it goes back to what I said in the beginning. You are a governor, and that is hugely important. We only have, handful of those. We have, 50 such governors, but you bring to it something that I believe is really special, which is your heart and your humanity, but the understanding of why you're doing this work. So thank you.
Thank you, Liz. God bless you. I adore you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Liz. Please join me every Tuesday for coffee to talk about heart and humanity with our elected leaders. Remember to hit subscribe to get an alert when a new episode is live and for exclusive content. Ciao.